Second round of the tournament. My opponent is a 1300 elo feeder rated kid and I'm playing as white. So let's see what happened. In this video I show you the best, in my opinion, weapon that there is against the French defense. So e4, e6. Now I have a ton of experience with the French defense. I played thousands of French games as black, but I also have experience as white. So I replied with d4, which is the move I think everyone should absolutely play. Taking a lot of space makes sense. And now after d5, I don't play knight on c3, I don't take, I don't push. I play knight on d2. This is, in my opinion, the best weapon against the French. With one single reason: if your opponent doesn't take, you're going to have a great position, and most importantly, your opponent is going to have a really difficult position to play. If he's not high rated, he's going to get destroyed in a few moves, because you just get a difficult position as black. Now, I personally take for this reason, in fact, and after you take, you get a solid position. Let's say you can play something like this, but even bishop d7 is crazy solid. I personally play knight on d7, and the point is that after you play knights, the position is something like this. You can play c5. And I mean, in this position, white is going to be better in every position, but at least you are close to equal, and you can get it though without suffering too much, I would say. So I would suggest to play this as black. But if the opponent plays the other two moves, which are the by far most played moves, which you play if you actually want to win as black, c5 or knight on f6, they're going to get destroyed. So let's see knight on f6, because this is the move my opponent played. After this e5, and as you can already see, my opponent doesn't have a ton of space. This knight doesn't make a ton of sense. The point is that he supported the c5 push, but it's not the greatest knight ever. So as you can see, it's not easy for black to develop pieces. And the reason why you play knight on d2 is because they can't really play bishop on b4. If they play bishop on b4, there is c3, which is the major difference with knight on c3. Also, yes, this knight is blocking my pieces, but I'm going to put this knight on f3, and this is really important. I want this knight there and this knight on e2, so they're not in conflict. At this point, I played bishop on d3, makes a ton of sense, putting pressure on the h7 pawn, and if you castle, you get destroyed. If you develop the bishop now, not only there is this, and you have to go back, there is also queen on g4, which is crazy. c5, which is the idea of this, all the pressure on d4, c3, knight on c6, knight on e2. The idea of knight on d2 is that if they play queen on b6, which is not the most played move, but it is played, and yeah, it is a good move, definitely playable. The most played move is just taking. If you play queen on b6, I'm going to play knight on f3, and now the pawn is defended. The best move is taking, which my opponent played, so this is still theory. And now you can play f6. Now if you play f6, and that's why I said you really need to be good, because come on, this is too difficult to play. You still have to castle and you played f6. You still have to develop pieces, to be fair, and you played f6. It doesn't make a ton of sense. You're going to get destroyed pretty fast if you don't know your stuff. And instead of doing this, they usually play bishop on b4, which makes much more sense. The move is king on f1, which is stupid. I wouldn't play king on f1, but let's say you play bishop on d2. You can actually trade into an endgame, but white is going to be better. Although your opponent has to know a ton of theory before getting into this position. But if you really want to get a win with white, you should play king on f1 and study your stuff. But going back, my opponent played a bad move, I would say. Bishop on e7. Bishop on e7 is inaccurate because you already have a really passive position. And this is the most passive move ever. You can castle and, yeah, basically say, oh, well, you can't really castle because I'm getting in with all the pieces. The other problem black has is that they have all the pieces on the queen side, which is a, you know, huge problem if your king is on the king side, in fact. The other thing you could play is a3, which I thought was better. a3 just prevents these. I'm going to play b4. I thought this was really, really good. Apparently castling was better because f6 again makes sense. Still, I don't get it. But if you play a5, which is sensible, like this position has been played only one time. No one is going to play f6 because it looks stupid. Between two 1300, between two 2300 rated player, and they played a5 because it looks much more natural, which is the move my opponent played, in fact. And they played queen on c2. Now this is a completely new game, and the idea of queen on c2 is that I want to play I want to play bishop on e3. So now this pawn is defended if I move the bishop. It all made a lot of sense. Also there is pressure there, you can't castle, so this is even more important than defending the pawn, of course. And he played pawn on h6. I thought this wasn't right. I mean, your position is so bad that you should go for counterplay. In fact, now, yes, f6 looks bad, but you kind of have to play it for a4. Because if you waste the time playing h6, I mean, you're going to have a ton of problems. I mean, you can give me this pawn. It's not a crazy pawn for you. You're not going to castle anyway. At least you open the file for your rook, and I'm wasting time. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. He played h6. Now I'm developing pieces. So bishop on e3. There is still... Right now you can't play this. It's not a tactic that works, because after this you play this, I just go back. So it doesn't make a ton of sense. Bishop on e3 is just a strong move. I'm going to castle, and I mean, I'm just developing. In a position like this where you're much better, you have more space, more relative pieces, you can just develop, and you wait the right point to attack your opponent. So he played a4, just taking space, also threatening to play knight on a5 and knight on b3, even though it doesn't work because I can just take. And now I thought about playing knight on c3. I discarded it, because if you play knight on c3, this point, I think this tactic works. Well, apparently not, because after you take, oh, that was this. But you can take, knight take, queen d2, and apparently you're going to lose the knight at a certain point. Yes, it's not easy to understand a position like this. So instead of going for that madness, I mean, I'm better, why should I do something like that? Again, develop pieces, be safe, short castle, and you win. Eventually you win, because your position is so much better. My opponent can do anything. I mean, if you castle and coming, even this way, it is just over. If you play this and win the pawn, I don't know, your best die is actually playing queen b3 and trading and hoping that you're going to survive the endgame. Probably not, because you're going to lose this pawn. Pretty easy to win, I think. So my opponent played knight on a5. And I don't know if he blundered or not. I mean, I just win a pawn. I just win a pawn, but to be fair, it's so difficult playing a position like this. So I win the pawn, and the move Stockfish is suggesting is queen b3 again, going for this position where you're down a pawn, but at least you're not that lost. Makes sense. But at this point he blundered and played short castle. The problem with short castle is that I think he just missed the move pawn on b4. And pawn on b4 is over. The problem with having a knight there is that if you move it, you just lose the rook. So instead of playing this, I don't know, what can you play? Queen on a7, but queen on a7 still looks terrible. Rook on c1 and getting in. Yeah, this was already over probably, and after this, before, it's not like completely over. I feel like some of you could lose a position like this because it's not that I just win material. I win material, but I need to see why. Because it's not just queen take, you need to calculate what happens after, and I calculated correctly. So before taking in a long game, just think, because you might get into sunk double. So I took the rook, and now there is this move. Knight on e7. What is the idea? The idea is that after you move this knight and the bishop, the queen is tapped. Now, it probably doesn't work because it takes too much time, but it kind of makes sense. My first idea was to play rook on c1, so that I can play queen on b8 and queen on c7. I thought there was knight on f6. The idea is that after I take, you play this. So now I lose the rook. But the fact is that after we played all these pieces, okay, I don't have the queen, but I want what, like a rook, a knight, and another rook. And I'm going to win this pawn. So, okay, you can still lose a position like this, but I mean, it's +6. And there is a reason why these pieces are crazy strong for me. So I shouldn't have it on a problem. I think knight on e5 in this position is crazy strong. You can take, obviously. Yeah, makes sense. But I saw what, in my opinion, wasn't even best move. Apparently wasn't, but it still wins in 2 seconds. Which is a4. The idea of a4 is that if you still go for this stupid idea, and by the way, going back for a second, if you play this and you play this, you lose on the spot because this doesn't work. The queen is hanging. So if you play this and you go for this idea, I take bishop there. There is a5. There is a5. You can't play queen on. I mean, you can play queen on a6. I win the queen. I just win the queen. Your problem is that if you go on another square, I'm just going to win the knight, and my queen is perfectly fine. That's your problem. So you have to take this pawn. And now you might think, well, what is the issue now? Well, the issue is that I can play a5 anyway. The queen is still hanging. You have to take. And after you take, of course, with the bishop, that is the move. Rook on b1. This rook on b1 is really important because, again, if you play this, I win the knight. And if you block with the bishop, which is the move my opponent play, the idea of sacrificing my pawn is that I now open the a file and I can win the knight. And in this position, my opponent resigned. So, in defense of my opponent, he was really tired because we play this tournament pretty late. He was kind of falling asleep while we were playing. So yeah, he didn't play his best chess. Can definitely beat all of you, so don't criticize him. But yeah, this shows, I mean, he could have played better, that's true, but this shows that you get a really difficult position to play. Like, even if you played bishop b5 check instead of bishop on e7, it's difficult. It is just difficult. So yeah, the Tadash is an OP opening. I suggest you to try to play some games. And that's it for today, guys. 2 out of 2. Next tournament is next round is probably going to be pretty difficult and hopefully interesting. So yeah, see you soon, guys, with the next video.